The world felt loud that day, but I was quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, like when you're hiding in a game of hide and seek, holding your breath and trying not to giggle. It was a heavy quiet, the kind that makes you feel like you're made of glass and everyone can see right through you. I was 8 years old and I was pretty sure I had become invisible. It started at the breakfast table. Mom was trying to get my older sister Jessica to eat her toast faster, while Dad was on the phone, his voice a low rumble about work things. My little brother Leo, who was only 4, was making a castle out of his cereal, and milk was dripping from the table onto his pajamas. I had something important to say. I had practiced it in my head all morning. I learned how to draw a horse with wings in art class yesterday, I said, trying to make my voice land somewhere between Mom's reminders and Dad's phone call. That's nice, sweetie, Mom said, but her eyes were on the clock on the wall. Jessica rolled her eyes, probably because she was 13 and everything I said was boring to her. Dad just gave a little wave with his hand, still talking into the phone. Only Leo looked up from his soggy castle, his eyes wide. A horse with wings? He whispered, as if it was the most magical thing he had ever heard. But he was just Leo, and he was 4. His world was full of magic. Mine was starting to feel like it was running out. The feeling followed me to school, a little gray cloud floating over my head. During recess, my best friend, Chloe, was busy planning her birthday party. She was talking about a big bouncy castle and a clown, and everyone was gathered around her. I tried to tell her about my winged horse, the one I had named Pegasus in my mind, but my voice got lost in the excited chatter about party favors and cake. I stood at the edge of the circle, kicking at a loose stone on the ground, feeling the glass wall get thicker around me. No one seemed to notice I was there. After school, it was worse. Mom picked us all up, her face tight with a frown. Jessica had forgotten her soccer cleats, which meant we had to drive all the way back to the school to get them. Leo was crying in his car seat because he'd dropped his favorite blue dinosaur and he couldn't reach it. The car was full of noise. Jessica's sighs, Leo's wails, Mom's frustrated muttering. I sat in the middle, perfectly still, holding my backpack on my lap. Inside, it was the drawing of my winged horse, folded carefully. I wanted to show it to Mom. I wanted her to see the way I had blended the blue and purple in its wings, how its eyes looked like they held secrets. But the moment never came. When we got home, the rush just continued. Dad was home early, but he was fixing a leaky pipe under the sink, and his legs were the only thing you could see sticking out from the cabinet. Jessica went straight to her room and slammed the door. Mom took Leo to give him a bath, and the sounds of splashing and happy squeals echoed from the bathroom. I was alone in the living room. The sun was starting to set, and long shadows stretched across the floor like tired arms. I slid the drawing out of my backpack. It was a little crumpled now. I looked at my horse with its brave wings and its secret-keeping eyes, and a tear rolled down my cheek and landed right on the paper. The ink smudged a little, like the horse was crying with me. That's when I said it, just a whisper in the big, empty room. No one sees me. I didn't know that someone did. Someone small. I tucked the drawing of my winged horse back into my backpack, zipping it up tight. If no one was going to see it, then I would keep it hidden. I would keep everything hidden. I pulled my knees to my chest and hugged them, making myself as small as I could. I rested my chin on my knees and watched the dust motes dance in the last beam of sunlight slanting through the window. Each tiny speck was on its own, floating in a big, big space. I felt just like one of them. That's when I heard the soft pitter-patter of small feet on the wooden floor. It was Leo. He was wearing his favorite blue pajamas, the ones with little yellow rockets on them. His hair was damp and smelled like Mom's lavender baby soap. He didn't say anything. He just came and stood beside me, his head barely reaching my shoulder as I sat curled up. He looked at my face, and I turned away, not wanting him to see the tear tracks on my cheeks. But he was persistent. He moved around so he was in front of me again. His little face was serious, his brow furrowed in a way that made him look like a tiny old man. He just stared at me for a moment, and for the first time all day, I felt like someone was actually looking at me, not through me. Then, he did something strange. He dug his small hand into the pocket of his pajama pants. It was a struggle. The pocket was small and his hand was clumsy. He pulled out a little lump wrapped in crinkly plastic. It was a strawberry candy, the kind we got from the grocery store checkout line. It was his last one. I knew it was his last one because he'd gotten 2 that afternoon, and he'd eaten the first one in the car, making loud, happy sucking noises. He'd been saving this one. For a 4-year-old, saving a candy for later was like an act of superhuman will. He held it out to me in the palm of his small hand. The plastic wrapper was a little sticky. He didn't say a word. He just held it there, a silent offering. His eyes were fixed on mine, and in them I didn't see any questions. I just saw understanding. He saw that I was sad, and this was his solution. It was the most valuable thing he had in the world at that moment, and he was giving it to me. My breath hitched. The big, heavy feeling in my chest started to feel a little bit lighter. I slowly uncurled my arms from around my knees and reached out. My fingers brushed against his, and I took the candy. It felt warm from being in his pocket. I unwrapped it slowly. The crinkle of the plastic was the only sound in the room. I popped the sweet, hard candy into my mouth. The taste of fake strawberry filled my senses, but it was the best thing I had ever tasted, because it tasted like being seen. Leo watched me for another moment, and then a small smile touched his lips. He finally broke his silence. He pointed a chubby finger at my backpack. "Horsefly?" he asked, his voice soft. I couldn't help it. A real smile, not a fake one, spread across my face. I pulled my backpack onto my lap and unzipped it again. I took out the drawing, the smudged here now a permanent part of the picture. I unfolded it carefully and held it out for him. "Yes," I said, my voice a little shaky. "A horse with wings. His name is Pegasus." Leo's eyes went wide with wonder. He leaned in close, his nose almost touching the paper. "Wow," he breathed. And in his wow, I heard everything I had been wanting to hear all day. I saw my horse through his eyes. Not just a silly drawing, but something magical and real. It was brave, and it could fly anywhere it wanted, even out of a quiet, lonely room. We sat there on the floor for what felt like a long time, the world shrinking until it was just the two of us and a horse with wings. I pointed out the details Leo might have missed. "See?" I whispered, my finger tracing the lines. "These are the primary feathers. They're the biggest, and they help him push the air down so he can go up. And these are the smaller ones for steering." I wasn't sure if that's how real wings worked, but it's how I had imagined them. And Leo listened as if I were a professor teaching the secrets of the universe. He'd occasionally let out a soft "oh" of understanding. He asked me what Pegasus ate, and I told him he ate clouds, but only the pink ones from the sunrise because they were the sweetest. The quiet bubble we had created was eventually popped by the sound of my dad grunting as he slid out from under the kitchen sink. "Well, that's that," he announced to no one in particular, wiping his hands on a rag. "The leak is no more." He walked into the living room, spotted us on the floor, and gave us a tired smile. "What are you two little mice up to?" For a second, the old feeling, the invisible feeling, pricked at me. I expected him to walk right past us, his mind already on the next problem. But Leo, brave little Leo, held up the drawing. "Look, Daddy, Emily's horse can fly." My dad stopped. He leaned over, his tall frame making a shadow over us. He took the drawing from Leo and held it carefully, like it was something important. He wasn't looking through it. He was looking at it. "Well, look at that," he said, his voice softer now. "A Pegasus. You got the wings just right, Emily. Look at all those feathers." He pointed to the same spot I had shown Leo. "That must have taken a long time." A warmth spread through my chest, chasing away the last of the chilly, glassy feeling. I had been so wrong. It wasn't that no one would see me. It was that I had stopped trying to be seen. I had let the noise of the day convince me that my voice was too small to be heard. Leo hadn't shouted. He had just stood by me. His silence a question, his candy an answer. He had shown me that you don't always have to be the loudest to be heard. "It's dinner time," Mom called from the kitchen, and the spell was broken, but not entirely. Dad handed the drawing back to me. "You should put this on the fridge, Em," he said, "so everyone can see it." Dinner was the usual chaos. Jessica complained about the green beans, Dad talked about the plumbing disaster, and Mom tried to get Leo to use his fork instead of his fingers. But something was different. I didn't feel like a ghost at the table anymore. I had an ally. Halfway through the meal, Leo caught my eye from across the table. He gave me a tiny, secret smile, and I smiled back. We had our own world now, him and me. A world with flying horses and strawberry candies, and the quiet understanding that we were there for each other. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I saw the drawing stuck to the refrigerator with a bright yellow magnet. My winged horse looked proud, flying right there between a grocery list and a postcard from Grandma. I walked over to it and touched the smudged spot where my tear had landed. It wasn't a sad spot anymore. It was a part of the story. I thought about the strawberry candy, long since dissolved, and the sticky wrapper I still had tucked away in my pocket. It was just a small thing, a piece of candy, a drawing, a little brother who didn't say a word, but it was everything. It was the moment the glass wall had shattered, not with a loud crash, but with a quiet, sweet whisper. It was the day I learned that even when you feel invisible, someone sees you. You just have to be willing to see them back. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm clock, but the room didn't feel gray and lonely. It felt possible. The sun was just starting to peek through my curtains, casting soft, hopeful stripes on my wall. For a moment, I lay there, listening to the quiet hum of the house before the daily storm. Usually, I would feel a little knot of dread in my stomach about the day, about having to find my voice all over again in the noise. But today, the knot was gone, replaced by a gentle warmth in my chest, the ghost of a strawberry candy. I slid out of bed, my feet silent on the cool floor, and padded into the kitchen. The first thing I saw was my drawing on the fridge. Pegasus was still flying, his wings spread wide and proud. It looked different in the morning light, less like a sad secret I had hidden away and more like a bright announcement. My mom was already there, pouring coffee, and she turned and smiled when she saw me. "There's my early bird. I see your masterpiece made it to the gallery." She winked at me as she gestured with her mug towards the fridge. "Your father was right. It belongs right there for everyone to see." Her words were casual, but they landed like little sunbeams. A few minutes later, Jessica came stumbling into the kitchen, her hair a messy tangle and her eyes still half closed. She grunted a morning as she opened the fridge to get the milk, her movements slow and grumpy. I braced myself, expecting her to ignore the drawing or make a sarcastic comment. She poured her cereal, and for a long moment she just stood there, munching on it sleepily while staring at the fridge door. "Wait, did you use the glitter crayons for the wings?" she asked, her voice gravelly with sleep. She squinted, leaning in a little closer. "Yeah," I said, my own voice barely a whisper. "The silver and the blue ones." She was quiet for another second, just chewing. "It actually looks like they're sparkling," she said, before closing the fridge door. "That's neat." She took her cereal bowl to the table. That was it. But neat from Jessica was like a standing ovation from anyone else. It was more than she'd said about my art in a year. The little bridge between us felt a bit sturdier. At school, the bouncy castle was still the main topic of conversation during recess. I saw Chloe and our friends huddled in their usual circle. The old me, the glass wall me from yesterday, would have hung back, kicking at the dirt and waiting for an invitation that would never come. But today, a new thought popped into my head. Leo didn't wait. He just walked right up to me. So I did. I took a breath and walked over to the group. Chloe was showing everyone pictures of different castles on her mom's phone. "The red and blue one is the biggest," I said, pointing to one of the pictures. It came out louder than I expected. Chloe looked up, surprised for a second, and then she smiled, a real, welcoming smile. "Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It looks like it could hold all of us. Do you think we should get that one?" And just like that, I was in. Another girl, Sarah, turned to me. "What do you think, Emily? A clown or a magician for the entertainment?" I was so used to their conversations flowing around me, it took me a second to realize she was asking me. "Oh, a magician," I said. "Magicians have secrets, like card tricks." They all agreed that was much cooler than a clown. I didn't need a magical drawing to feel like I was there. I just needed to show up. The best part of the day, though, was when I got home. As soon as I opened the door, I heard the familiar pitter-patter. Leo was waiting for me, his little face lighting up when he saw me. He had a piece of paper clutched in his hand. It was covered in blue and green scribbles, a beautiful, chaotic, and wonderful mess. "Ship," he said, holding it up to me proudly. "A big, big ship for Pegasus, so he can fly to the water and have a swim." My heart did a little flip. He had been thinking about our world. He was building it with me. "It's perfect, Leo," I told him, and I meant it. We spent the whole afternoon on the living room floor, surrounded by crayons and paper. I drew Pegasus flying over a vast ocean, and Leo drew a whole fleet of colorful ships to meet him. We gave them names like the Sea Rocket and the Bouncy Boat. He even drew a giant green octopus on the ocean floor. "He's a friendly octopus," Leo explained seriously. "He gives hugs." Jessica came in at one point, pretending she was looking for a book on the shelf behind us, but she lingered. I saw her watching us, a tiny, curious smile on her face. "You guys are a mess," she said, but there was no bite to it, none of her usual annoyance. She watched us for a moment longer. "Make sure you draw him a helmet," she said, pointing a finger at Pegasus. "For safety." It was a ridiculous, silly, big sisterly thing to say, and it made me giggle. It was her way of joining our world, just for a second. That night, Lying in bed, I thought about the chain reaction of the day. It was like one of those domino videos Mrs. Davis sometimes showed us in class. Leo's candy had been the first domino. It knocked over the next one, which was me showing him the drawing. That knocked over the next, which was Dad putting it on the fridge. That led to Mom and Jessica seeing it, which gave me the courage to talk to my friends, which led to me coming home and building a whole new world with Leo. Leo's quiet love had built a bridge, not just between him and me, but to everyone else. He hadn't just given me a candy. He had given me a piece of his attention, a gift I was learning to give back to others, and even to myself. The weeks that followed weren't suddenly perfect. The world didn't stop spinning, and my family didn't magically transform into a quiet, calm oasis. The house was still a whirlwind of noise and schedules. Jessica still spent hours on the phone with her friends, Dad still had stressful days at work, and Mom still had that tired look in her eyes by the evening. The chaos was still the chaos. But I was different. The glass wall was gone, and it hadn't come back. I had found my anchor in the storm, and he was a 4-year-old with sticky pockets and a love for rocket ship pajamas. Our world of Pegasus and friendly octopuses grew bigger and more detailed. It became our secret language, a place we could go just by looking at each other across the dinner table. Leo would save interesting-looking leaves for me on the way home from his preschool, telling me they were food for Pegasus. I would draw maps for them, charting courses through the constellations above our house. One rainy Saturday afternoon, something truly unexpected happened. Leo and I were on the floor, deep in our world. I was drawing a rainbow bridge for Pegasus to cross, and Leo was making a thunder sound effect by banging 2 wooden blocks together. The door to the living room opened, and Jessica came in. She didn't just walk past us. She stopped and watched. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her tone wasn't mocking. It was just curious. "Pegasus needs to get to the cloud castle," I explained, not looking up from my drawing. She was quiet for a long moment. I could feel her standing there. Then I heard a rustle, and she sat down on the floor a few feet away from us. It was such a strange sight that I finally looked up. She picked up a purple crayon. "Does the cloud castle have a dragon?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, the octopus is friendly." "Well, every castle needs a dragon," she said, almost to herself. She started to draw on a blank piece of paper. It was a wobbly, funny-looking dragon with big, googly eyes and smoke that looked more like curly hair coming out of its nose. Leo crawled over to look at it and giggled. "Funny dragon!" he squealed. "He's a nice dragon," Jessica insisted, a smile finally breaking through her teenage coolness. "He guards the castle, but he also tells really good jokes." And just like that, our world of 2 became a world of 3. I never did have a big, dramatic talk with my parents about how I had been feeling. It didn't seem necessary. Instead, I saw 1,000 tiny changes. My dad started asking to see my drawings every day when he got home. My mom started carving out 5 minutes before bed just to sit with me. No little brothers or big sisters allowed, just to ask me about my day. Not just what I did, but how I felt. They had always loved me, I knew that. But now it felt like they were learning my language. The quiet language that Leo had spoken first. Years have passed. Leo is not a little boy anymore. His pockets are usually full of his phone and car keys instead of sticky candies. Jessica's funny dragon drawing is long gone, tucked away in an old memory box somewhere. My drawing of Pegasus no longer hangs on the fridge. But last week, I came home from a hard day at my own job, the weight of the world feeling heavy on my shoulders. I felt quiet, the bad kind of quiet. I walked into my old family home, and there was Leo, home for the weekend from college. He looked up from the couch and saw my face. He didn't say, "What's wrong?" or "Are you okay?" He just got up, walked to the kitchen, and came back a moment later. He handed me a cup of tea. He didn't say a word. He just held it out to me, a silent offering. And in that moment, I wasn't a grown woman with a job and responsibilities. I was an 8-year-old girl sitting on the living room floor. And he wasn't a college kid. He was my little brother, seeing me when I felt invisible, and giving me the most valuable thing he had. I learned something essential all those years ago. We all feel invisible sometimes, lost in the noise of our own lives and the lives of those around us. We build walls of glass around ourselves and wait for someone to notice us. But the cure isn't to shout louder. It's to look closer. It's to see the person next to you, to notice their quiet, and to offer them whatever you have. Because love isn't always in the grand gestures or the loud declarations. Sometimes it's in a shared drawing. Sometimes it's in a cup of tea. and sometimes it's in the unspoken kindness of a little brother giving you his last candy without a word.